Hello, this is MikeS, known as Predator006 on PokerStars. Today we are going to be reviewing a $60 pot limit Omaha high-low sit-and-go. This is a turbo, as are most of the PL08 sit-and-goes that run above $10 online. The PL08 community is very small. I do notice a couple regulars in here. Jam Porsche, Halo, Kid Wonder, Joe Sarge. I've run against them quite a bit before. The others I'm not that familiar with. We're going to split the sit-and-go up into 4 distinct phases: an early, a middle, a bubble, and the heads-up phase. While we go through the sit-and-goes, we will talk about the optimal style for each phase. As we begin the sit-and-go, obviously in the early phase, we are going to play an extremely tight and weak style, and this tight and weak is typically a derogatory term in most poker games, especially no limit hold'em, but it is the key to success in the early phases of PL08 sit-and-goes. To elaborate a little bit more on the tight weak style that I play, rarely if ever will you see me raise in the first couple rounds of a sit-and-go. And even if I'm acting behind a pre-flop raise, I will typically smooth call, even with monsters, throughout the first couple rounds. The reason why we don't typically raise in the early stages throughout PL08 sit-and-goes is it's much more of a flop-dependent game than no limit hold'em. Obviously, our goal in Omaha high-low is to scoop pots. And we're not going to continue throughout the hand seeing turns and rivers in these early stages without the potential to do that. That first hand we had Jan under the gun with aces, playing them extremely strong. She flopped a set and was called down by R.H. Abe throughout the hand, and R.H. Abe ended up hitting a straight on the river. He should not have been in the hand, but let's make a mental note not to bluff R.H. Abe throughout the rest of the sit-and-go. This second hand we had a small blind raise out of position in this first round. There's no real reason to do this. There's no way you're going to push out any of these limpers pre-flop, and you're playing a raise pot out of position throughout the rest of the hand. This is a huge disadvantage. A majority of the time we don't hit flops hard enough to justify playing the turn and river for our tournament life, even if we have a pre-flop premium hand. And as you can see, this is the second person that raised out of position in 2 hands, and we have actually 3 people out of the tournament already. Although the dynamics of the sit-and-go has changed quite a bit, losing 3 players after 2 hands, we'll stick with our original tight weak game plan. General rule of thumb is to start considering raises in the second phase of the sit-and-go, which is around the 75-150 level, and that's obviously assuming we have somewhat near to our original starting stack. To go into a little bit more detail about why we play this tight weak style, in PL08 with the split pot game, the hand equities are so close between playable hands. You'll see a top 5% hand is only around a 55-45% equity favorite versus a top 20% hand. This is a huge contrast to no limit hold'em, where obviously you can have an 80-20 equity favorite with a pocket pair over another pocket pair, and that is not going to happen with 2 playable hands in PL08. The fact that you can't be dominated with PL08 hands will be a mathematical tool that we can use throughout the later stages of the sit-and-go. In these later stages, we'll be raising quite often, and that will put us in high expected value situations due to the combination of both the fold equity from our raise and the all-in hand equities being so close. It's pretty typical that throughout the first couple rounds of the sit-and-go, I'll be sitting between 1,400 and 1,600 chips, not looking to play any big pots, and it looks like Claus may have fell asleep here in his big blind. Now we are in the big blind. Dealt a 3, 5, 6, 7. There is a glaring problem that sticks out with playing this type of hand. Is anytime that we hit a flop, we're going to pretty much have an obvious low on the board. And if there are multiple players in the pot, we'll be playing for half of it. So we'll check our big blind. Well, we flop the nuts with no redraws whatsoever, facing a 50 chip bet from Kid Wonder. Looks as if the best we can do is get our 25 chips back if we got to a showdown with this hand. Kid Wonder limped from the cutoff. He has a potential low and could be drawing at a flush, and there's no real reason for us to continue in this hand. A lot of beginner players would have a problem laying down that type of hand, but you have to consider, do you really want to play a hand out of position against the chip leader, Kid Wonder? He very likely already has a low and could potentially have a flush draw to go with it. This next hand, we are on the button with a double suited Ace-Jack 8-5. It is a hand that has good two-way potential. We will go ahead and limp with. Boom! Hit the nut flush, as well as the second nut low draw. It's somewhat unlikely in this situation. Either of these blinds will have ace-2, so let's go ahead and give them a free card here. Now I think it's important to bet here because they'll think it's a little less likely that I have the flush since there are 4 spades on the board. I think that 5 is going to ruin our action on this hand, putting the potential for a wheel on the board. And he folded to my half-pot bet. You've heard me refer to the mathematical model of pot limit Omaha, high-low. One of the tools that can really help us understand this model can be found at ProPokerTools.com. First, we're going to go to the Hand Rank Simulator. If you Google or Yahoo that web page, the first thing that pulls up is the following. On this page, you can put in any specific hand, and it will rank it according to the relative percentage that this hand is according to all PLO8 hands. That Ace, King, 3, Queen, all clubs is in the top 8%. You could pull up a hand such as Queen, Queen, 3, 9 with 1 suit. It is in the top 82% of all PLO8 hands, which mean it is one of the worst that you can have. A hand like Ace 2, 3, 4, a rainbow, ranks in the top 12% of hands. The reason why I say the relative strength of the hand is because a hand that ranks in the top 12 percentile may or may not be a favorite over a hand that even ranks in the top 25th percentile. And that brings us to the next page we can go to, the Omaha High-Low Simulator. On this simulator, you can put in specific hands, you can put in hand ranges, you can put in the top X% of hands, you can put in high cards, middle cards, low cards, wheel cards. Let's put in that Ace 2, 3, 4 and see how it lines up versus a hand that's probably in about the 25th percentile, 20th to 25th percentile. A hand like Ace 2, 5, 6, regardless of suits, the Ace 2, 3, 4 being a better hand percentile is not necessarily the favorite for obvious reasons. With them both sharing the nut low, it's more likely the 5-6 is going to result in a better high hand than the 3-4 would. Let's go ahead and put in a hand that a lot of people would think would be a monster, especially in the early rounds of sit and go. Let's say we raise with Ace, Ace, 6, 6. We get 3 callers in the hand, something like Ace 2, 3, 10. And for the other 2, let's go ahead and put random cards and see what happens when we simulate this. As you'll be able to see, the Ace, Ace, 6, 6 is actually a slight underdog to Ace 2, 3, 10, and favorite over the 2 random hands. If we go ahead and change that 6 to a 9, make it a little bit worse of an Ace, Ace, you'll see that we are actually more along the lines of the 2 random hands. getting closer with that ace 2 3 10 being a rather large favorite. It's really fun to play around and just kind of look at all the different scenarios, and it'll be very evident that you're never going to be an extreme favorite, and that gets us back to early phase of the sit and go, why we don't really raise that often, because we need to hit flops with our ace 6 6. We need to hit flops with our ace 2 3 10 to be able to continue on and scoop the pot. There's some interesting examples on the bottom. You can run a monster versus garbage. Here's ace 3 5 7 double suited against a top 20% hand. With the 20% hand, it's practically a coin flip. You could change that to a random hand versus a top 20% hand. Something that's in the 50th percentile is not that much of an underdog, 57-42 to a top 20% hand. And we're back to the action. While we were at ProPokerTools.com, we saw approximately 6 or 7 hands. All of them we folded. The most significant one was ace king jack 8. It was a rainbow, and we were in second position, but under the gun clause made a pre-flop raise, so we went ahead and laid that down. The blinds have slightly gone up. We're up to 25 and 50. And we are still in the early stages of sit and go, where we're going to continue our type weak style, play very passively, and wait for other people to make a mistake. This next hand is interesting. We have 10-10-5-6 facing a min raise from early position, and most likely getting 10-1 on a call, assuming that the under gun player doesn't re-raise. And we would have hit top set. Even though we hit our set of 10s here, I'm okay with laying it down. There's obviously a ton of draws on the board. We have potential for a low draw, a straight draw, a heart draw, and there's not really a safe flop that we could have seen with our 10-10-5-6 other than quads or obviously a boat. Well, facing a bet, a call, and an all-in, this would have been an extremely tough hand to play post-flop if I called. Do I pot that flop? Check raise? Check fold? You can make cases for all three of those things. And the results of the hand, I would have been scooped by low as well as a straight. Amazingly, since neither of the two opponents had a flush draw, we would have been significantly ahead in the hand with 53% equity. But if you change that to ace 2-4 with a flush draw with a random card, you can see we're significantly behind in the hand. This next hand, we are on the button with a suited ace 2-9-9. If we limp here, we would be able to call a raise from the small blind or big blind and be in position for the remainder of the hand. If we choose to raise here, we would be potentially playing for all our chips if one of the blinds chose to 3-bet. Although I don't have anything but a low draw and a pair, it is very believable that I may have hit this flop with a low draw and a flush draw, or a low draw with some type of wrap. So it's an easy hand to bet there and take it down on the flop. And this next hand, ace 2-8-9 suited. We definitely plan to limp here, but Claus chose to raise to 175. We will call because we have position, hoping to hit a flop pretty hard and make him play for a stack. So we flop the nut low draw with a gut shot on a suited board. We're facing a pot-sized bet from Claus, who's obviously willing to play for his whole stack. And should we have had a pair with that low draw or a flush draw with the low draw, we could potentially consider putting him in for a stack, but we're not gonna do that with just the low draw, hoping to split the 425 chips that were in the pot. This is a mistake that a lot of beginner players make. They see that they have the nut low draw and are willing to call a bet there with really no chance to win the high half of the pot unless we obviously hit our gut shot. You have to consider that since Claus had 900 chips, that we could potentially be putting 900 chips in the pot to hopefully win our 225 chips back. And you also want to consider if Claus happened to have an ace-2 with a pair on the board, a 4, 6, or 10, or if he happened to have any card actually higher than a 9, we're in extremely bad shape should we get all our chips in. Even if the low comes out, we would be 3/4 for potentially his whole stack. This next hand we are looking at ace-4, 6, 10. With a suited 10 on the big blind. It's folded around to the small blind, who limps in. We could potentially raise in this situation. We have an above average hand, but we'll go ahead and see a flop. Well, we flopped a pair, a gut shot, a backdoor low draw, a bad flush draw. We'll go ahead and bet here, and we're facing a check raise from Claus. I fully expected him to fold to my flop bet. Some of the hands he may check raise with would probably be as low as 2 pair, as well as some type of higher wrap, maybe king 10-9, ace king 10. But it's definitely not worth a call in this situation, or a push in my opinion. This next hand we have ace-2, 8-9. We're going to go ahead and raise here, realizing that we're risking our tournament life without seeing a flop, out of position, and we're hoping for a fold, but he does make a call. We most likely had the best hand pre-flop. I really don't like to limp in that situation, because if he does happen to raise from the big blind, we're really confronted with a tough decision whether to call and check fold if we miss a flop, or to even push pre-flop. If he does make that raise from the big blind, we may be flipping a coin, if that, for our tournament life. So, but we hit the flop. Checking is out of the question. We don't want to give him a chance to split with 2 pair or some type of similar hand. We definitely want to bet in this situation, and did take it down on the flop. This next hand's a pretty easy to read small blind big blind confrontation. We had RH Abe bet this flop and was min raised by Jelt and called, so it seems to be pretty obvious that RH Abe has some type of low draw, and that 200 chip pot gave him 3-to-1 odds to call that flop raise, and obviously didn't hit, so Jelt bet the pot and took that down on the turn. Ace-3, 8 king in this situation, it's a tough decision for me. I don't have the right type of stack size to be able to push this hand pre-flop. It's a semi-strong hand. If I'm re-raised, I'm probably not ahead. Calling is an option, but I chose to wait for better spots than this, even though it's a somewhat strong pre-flop hand. That ace-ace-2 check raise that Jelt made, in PLO8, it's a little bit different from No Limit Hold'em, where you can represent things post-flop a lot easier in PLO8. No Limit Hold'em, people tend to not believe that you have what you're representing, but they do in PLO8. Jelt could have very well been on a low draw himself, but when RH Abe didn't push for all his chips on the ace-ace-2, Jelt knew he didn't have a 2, so it was an easy turn takedown for him. This next hand, ace-5, jack, king, double suited. It's a extremely strong combination hand with flush, obviously 2 flush draws, but low as well as high potential. We went ahead and limped from our early position, and it was folded around to the big blind. This 3, 6, 7 is definitely a flop I could represent, hitting obviously the low. And I don't want to be pushed off of it, so I went ahead and checked in position, since Claus seems like an extremely aggressive player. That turn queen of hearts gives us the 4th nut low, as well as a high draw. And we hit probably the best card we can imagine for our hand, the 4 hearts or the 2 hearts. Our somewhat small river bet was called with the 2nd nut low, 2nd nut high. Going back, let's see what Claus had. Wow, he had an excellent hand. His set of 3s was good throughout the hand until the river 4 of hearts, and his 2nd nut low was also good until that 4 hearts counterfeited him. So I take that back about the 2 being a strong card also. The 4 hearts was pretty much the only card that we scoop with. I really couldn't have played that hand more optimally. I probably could have bet a little bit more on the river and gotten called, but notice if we were to play for all our chips pre-flop or even on the flop, any more aggressive than I did, we would have gotten all our chips in way behind and obviously sucked out on the river, but we like to make the right plays, not the plays that just end up working out. This hand is very marginal, ace 6, 7, 10. We'll plan on folding that in our small blind. Sitting in third place out of 6. Blinds are very shortly going to go up to 75, 150. Another marginal hand facing an under the gun raise with a call. Easy fold. As we move into the second phase of the sit and go, our style is extremely dependent on our stack size. We currently have still a decent sized stack, which puts us in a somewhat awkward situation as far as raising pre-flop, because if we do raise to pre-flop when the blinds are 75, 150, we're pretty much making a decision that we're going to play for our stack if somebody re-raises. But what we like to do in this stage, we love to 3-bet with big hands, and especially if we're isolating a short stack, because usually when a short stack raises, like in this situation, if Claus would go all in with 818, we love to push and try to get everybody else out of the pot, because with free money in the pot, even if we're flipping a coin with Claus, we still have positive expected value from pushing in that situation. As we get deeper in the sit and go, we're going to discuss a little bit about what hands play well when you are all in for your entire stack pre-flop. When I'm playing for my stack, I like to play hands that have combination potential of getting high as well as low. Something like maybe an ace with a wheel card and a king. It really helps if it's suited. I tend to stay away from one-way hands such as an ace 2, 5, 6 or a ace, king, jack 10, king, king, jack, queen. Hands like that you could be putting in your entire stack, and after the flop you could be either drawing dead or way ahead. The fact that we still have an average stack somewhat cripples our situation. We get extremely aggressive if we are short stacked, somewhat aggressive if we're the large stack, but we'll stick with a pretty tight weak style with having approximately 15 big blinds left. When this hand is shown down, you'll see that Joe chose to raise with a marginal one-way hand. He doesn't have any card that can make a low in his hand. Claus has an average two-way hand, but after a flop like that, Joe's in a lot of trouble with Claus guaranteed half the pot and most likely to win the whole thing. We are in the big blind and dealt ace, ace, 2, 3 double suited. This is the granddaddy of all PL08 hands, the best pre-flop hand you can get. Although this is only dealt 1 out of every 22,000 plus hands, you cannot get too attached to it and married to it. It's obviously an extremely strong hand. We'll raise, and Claus chose to fold. But you've got to be willing to lay it down if you miss, and you're shown strength from your opponent. This next hand, we have an ace 2 jack queen. Unfortunately, there are no suits in it. Well, we have a raise and a re-raise, but you know, Claus's raise could be a somewhat isolation play with a weaker than normal range, and I'm going to go ahead and push here, realizing that if I do end up losing the hand, I'll still have 700-800 chips to play with, and there's obviously the potential for me to split with one or both of these other players. The looks of it, we got him pretty bad pre-flop, and although we hit 2-pair on the flop, both the other players have a low as well as better 2-pair potential. We did get lucky and hit a boat, but we did split the pot with Claus, who did have a weak low. We have another good combination hand on the button here. I'm going to go ahead and limp because we still have that awkward stack size where if we raise pre-flop and we get re-raised, we'd be forced to call, but we probably wouldn't have the best hand at that point. And we flopped a huge hand with top pair and a wheel wrap. We'll go ahead and bet pot on the button, hope that he calls or even pushes, but that did not happen. We definitely want to bet in that situation. Now, I'm questioning myself for the pot bet, where maybe I could have induced a bluff or even just gotten a call if I would have put out a half pot to 2/3 size bet. We're currently at the last hand of the 75-150 blind level. As we move to the 100-200 level, I like to consider this the bubble phase of the sit and go. When we're in the bubble phase and after, we're making decisions every time we play a hand that we're playing for our stack. It's mathematically incorrect to make any raises pre-flop and not be willing to show down for all your chips with the hand. That king-king, high-low, double-suited, even though it's double-suited, it's not worth it from early position. If we're called or if someone pushes behind, we're in extremely bad shape with that type of hand. If you can take one thing out of this training session, it has to do with bubble play. And in this level, the most important thing by far to making that pre-flop commitment has everything to do with your stack size as well as your opponent's stack sizes. Just to go over a couple scenarios, for example, if we are the large stack at this point, we'd be raising an extremely wide range of hands. We'd prefer to raise the medium to the medium-high stacks. If you start raising those stacks, they won't want to do battle with you till they're in the money. And when the smaller stacks see you raising those medium to medium-high stacks, they'll shy away also because they think, hey, maybe the two larger stacks will go to battle and I'll sneak into the money. Also, if we're approximately sitting at 3,500 and there's a couple short stacks and a 5,000 chip stack, we definitely start raising the large stack. It's a little contradictory what you would think, but the large stack doesn't want to go battle with you because if he happened to lose a hand and get scooped, he's down to 1,500 where he can't push everyone around with a stack like he's hoping to do. And if we're the short stack, let's say between 1,000 and 1,500 chips, we're going to be raising the other short stacks extremely liberally. Our number one goal in this situation is make sure these other short stacks can accumulate chips. We are more than willing to raise a hand that may end up only with 40% equity post-flop in order to do battle with them. But our goal is definitely to keep the short stack short, the other one short, and if they happen to want to flip for their tournament, we're more than willing to try to double up to get back into the swing of things. Once again, another player chose to go all in for a large pot with a one-dimensional hand. Ends up getting scooped by Jelt, and we are currently down to 4 players. With these 4 players left, we are currently the small stack. It's not that small where we still do have fold equity versus any one of these other 3 opponents should we choose to raise pre-flop. Every hand from here on out in the sit and go, I do a what-if analysis if I'm considering to play a pot. What if I raise and someone pushes? Do I have mathematically the right odds to call that push with? What are the other people thinking when I raise? What type of ranges would they be able to call with or push with? This next hand is interesting. We have Ace-Ace 6-6 double suited from the big blind, and we have a choice to make. It's limped in by an under the gun player who is extremely unlikely to fold to our pot size raise pre-flop, which puts us in an awkward situation where we need to bet practically every flop. By making that commitment pre-flop, we left ourselves with a pot size bet that we must put in on any flop. The only hands we're really worried about are something like an Ace-2 4-8 or ace 2-5 something, where he has the potential to get 2 pair as well as make us low. Ace 4-5-6 in the small blind, it's an easy fold no matter what the action is in front of us. We still have a middle stack, and everybody has approximately the same number of chips. Obviously, I've mentioned before, when everyone's this even, you need to stay a little bit more patient than normal. Here is another double suited hand, just like the last one. Although it's double suited, this weak hand doesn't justify us making a play in this situation at this point in the sit and go. We do have a small blind raise from Jelt, and it is called by R.H. Abe, and we have a potential for a large pot here. And it looks like both players are all in, with Jelt having a set of aces, and R.H. Abe is in a lot of trouble and sucks out with a backdoor straight on the river. So we achieved our first goal. We're in the money right now. The blinds just went up. We definitely want to stay extremely aggressive versus claws. Our stacks are about even, and we can't let him build any more than we have. We have ace 6-10 king suited in the big blind here. More than willing to play for all our chips with a combination hand like this. Claws did fold to us though. Our next hand, we have ace 3-4 from the small blind. This is pretty much a raise and commit with any type of flop, just as we did with the ace 6-6. Although we want to put pressure on claws, a king-jack 9-3 is not the type of hand we want to raise his big blind with. With the stacks as they are, R.H. Abe can't be ultra-aggressive pre-flop in this situation. If he does raise to 10-50, either of us could come over the top, and he has to have a decent enough hand to call with, so it's not to the point where he can be raising all the time with his large stack yet. This next hand, we are in the big blind with ace 10-10-jack with one suit. It is a one-dimensional hand. We don't really want to play for our whole stack. If Claude ends up limping, we would go ahead and push in this situation, hoping and expecting him to fold pre-flop. He does raise, and we're going to go ahead and fold this hand right now, and most likely end up in a better spot for all our chips. Ace 6-9 king suited from the small blind, easy fold. Now here's ace 3-5-7 suited. We are going to put pressure on claws. If he ends up pushing or calling, that's fine. Either way, it's a mathematically sound decision to push pre-flop here. Flop is 2-2-5 with our diamonds. He bet into us. We'll call. Insta-call, assuming that even if he does have a 2, we still have a low draw as well as a flush draw as a backup. And we ended up quartering him with our flush hitting on the river. We were ahead even on that flop with our pair of 5s. Right now is about the time R.H. Abe should be raising my big blind almost every time. I'm not going to want to get overly involved with claws being a short stack, and claws is going to let him try to steal from me. Ace 3-9 king suited. It's an easy push here to try to bust claws. When you do the what if analysis, what if I go all in and lose this hand? I still have 2,400 chips, which is actually enough to have fold equity when I'm raising from the big blind. So we went ahead and call, and we ended up winning with a pair of 9s. So we are now heads up with even stacks. It seems as if R.H. Abe is somewhat tight. Even stacks are a little bit of field play when the blinds are still 150, 300. When you have 3,000 or 4,000, or if you're bigger stack at 8 or 9,000, it's more of a mathematical game. Obviously, we'll go ahead and be a little more aggressive than normal with R.H. Abe being tight. But with the blinds as low as they are, we're still deep enough to call a pre-flop raise without pushing. And if you have 3 or 4,000 or 8 or 9,000, if you raise pre-flop, you're doing it with intentions of getting all in every hand. Ace 3 Jack Queen from the button, easy hand to raise with. and if he does end up pushing, we'd be willing to play for our stacks in that situation. In the big blind with a weak hand, 4, 6, 10 king. He's limping to us, which is wonderful. We love to see that. We have a gut shot and a bad low draw on this board. We'll check fold this. Pretty easy decision. Currently in the big blind. King Jack 9-4. Not willing to raise in this situation. Next hand we have here is 2-2-3-6 on the button. We could go ahead and call here. Even if he does raise to 900 pre-flop, we can call in position with this type of hand, which is a hand that can sometimes hit a flop pretty hard. Betting this flop, we made a stab at it with a weak flush draw, and he ended up folding. And next hand we have is a strong combination hand, Ace 3 9 King. We are out of position, so we'll end up just calling here. We ended up with a nut low draw on the flop with no pair. My intentions are to check call if he bets anything here, and if he doesn't, I'm going to bet out this turn. I prefer to trap when I'm out of position. He ended up calling. We have a very well disguised wheel here. I went ahead and bet pot because I didn't think he believed that I had the wheel. But he ended up folding, and that's fine also. We're starting to build a slight chip advantage here. We're going to take this one-way hand and limp in with it. And we found a good coordinated board to bluff a pot at. And he actually beat us to it. But something like Ace 4-6 is something I would have bet should he have checked to me. If we are able to steal a couple more blinds here, we're going to move out of the feel stage and more towards the unexploitable mass side. Unfortunately, this isn't a hand to do it with, so he's building back to be about even with us right now. This next hand is another combination hand, albeit the 7's not really that low. We'll go ahead and raise here. Hoping for a fold. If he calls, fine. If he pushes, we have a decision to make. 2-7 Jack Queen from the big blind. He limps to us, which is a pretty bad play in my opinion. And we flop top 2. We're going to go ahead and bet here. If he does call, well, he raised. We'll go ahead and call here with the intentions of betting out if it's not a club or a low. And it is neither, so we're going to assume our hand is good right now. If he ends up calling, he's either going to be chasing a low or a straight. I'm sorry, or a flush in that situation typically. Our plan was to start to get extremely aggressive right now with the stack sizes. Ace Ace 5 Queen, excellent hand to do it with. We flopped a low draw. We've got to overpair to the board, and he bet into us right now. We're going to go ahead and put them all in. It's a no-brainer to commit at this point, but he has 2 pair as well as an open-ended straight draw, no low draw at all, and he got counterfeited on the river with the pair 8s, with the 8 coming up on the river, giving us a higher 2 pair than he originally had on the flop. Well, that should have provided you with a good basic understanding of some of the strategies used in PL08 sit-and-goes. This is MikeS. I appreciate you watching, and in the future look for more of the mathematics behind bubble and short-handed play. Thank you.